A message brought to you by Oasis Christian Fellowship, standing on the Word of God, proclaiming the full gospel.
I mentioned last week that I didn't know where to start for a message. But I was drawn to the book of Ruth. So that's where we started. And after the meeting, Jean said to me, she said, as soon as you start to talk about minor characters in the Bible, I knew you were going to speak about Ruth. She said, you did. And you know what else she said? It's my favourite book. Talk about piling the pressure on. So now, if I make a mistake in something I say, well, I know God will forgive me. But if I mess up Jean's favourite book, I don't know how easy she will forgive me for that. I've got to confess, it's not really a book I paid much attention to. And later on in the meeting last week, Leon asked me, he says, so what can we expect from this new series? And I just say, well, I don't have a clue what's going to come of it. But this past week, I've been able to look a little bit closer at it, and there are some really beautiful things in store. So, Jean, I can see why this may well be your favourite book. And I pray as we start this series, we'll all grow to love some of these dear characters that we come across. Characters that one day we're going to meet in glory. Do you ever consider that? When you read the Bible? Yes, we know the greatest treasure in heaven is Christ himself. But did you realize, do you think, do we consider the people we read about in the Bible we'll one day meet? You'll one day meet Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You'll one day meet Moses and hear the first-hand account of the parting of the Red Sea, of the miracles of Egypt. You'll meet Joseph and Mary as they tell you the story of Jesus' birth. You'll meet Paul who'll tell you all about his trials and tribulations. And we'll be able to ask, so what was that thorn then, Paul? Everything will be revealed. One day, these characters will be made real to us. Not just people on a page. We'll meet them one day. What a lovely thought that is. Now, I did ask Jean if, since it's her favourite book, if she would like to come up and give the reading, but she's gammied her leg up a bit, I think it's fair to say. So I'm going to give the reading on Jean's behalf. Ruth chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech. The name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites. I should have practiced that one. Of Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Ophrah, and the name of the other was Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So the woman survived her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread. My, what a horrible situation. A famine had come to the land of milk and honey. And there was nobody there in that land who was unaffected by it. But here, we've got a man who lives in Bethlehem in the midst of this famine. And I don't think it's hard to put our mind into his situation, to just imagine what it was like. You had this chap, Elimelech, and he probably struggled for weeks, months, we don't know, trying to provide for his family. And maybe one day, he looks at his wife and his 2 boys, the 3 people who mean the world to him, and he's struggling to provide for them. And he sees a land just over there where there is plenty. And he makes a decision. And with every best intent, he says to his family, we're going over there to Moab. Because over there, I can provide for you. So, they'll have got all their things together and off they went. And this is where things get interesting. Because if we take care in looking how they leave, we can see something here. The language chosen in Scripture is very careful. See, our translation says Elimelech went to dwell in the country of Moab. It's not quite giving the right idea there. The actual word means a temporary arrangement. And Royden, you'll know this word well. You've written about it plenty in the past. Because it means the word sojourn. And it means pitching a tent. It means a temporary living place. So really, when we read that scripture, what we're really reading is this. A certain man in Bethlehem, Judah, went to live for a short time in the country of Moab, and he and his wife and 2 sons. Now, think again about the situation. The famine's all around. This is the land of plenty. And we can picture it. I mean, Elimelech's there with his family and saying we'll go there. But it's just for a little while. Just to see how the land lies. And when they get there after a short time, what do we read after that? And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. And there was a third and final stage after that. What was that? And they dwelt there about 10 years. Can we hear a creeping of words? Oh, this tent. Oh, just ignore the tent. It's only temporary. I'll be coming home soon. And then shortly after, it's a case of, well, the tent isn't very comfortable, actually. And then it's a case of, let's find something just a little bit nicer. Again, it's not going to be for long, but something nicer than sleeping in a tent. And then the next stage, after a while, they look around and think, well, isn't this a nice little home we've got ourselves here? The 3 stages of moving to Moab. The tent is erected. The temporary living place. The second stage is then it's giving a foundation. And the final stage is then the tent is given a roof. 3 little descriptions about a family moving from the land of milk and honey to the land of Moab. And by the end of what we've read, nothing is the same. Do we know much about Moab? Where was it that they'd come to? This place that they'd call home for around 10 years. Just take a little look at the country of Moab. Because if we understand it, we can get a bit of an idea of this journey they've made. See, Moab was not neutral ground to the Israelites. Elimelech was not a friend of Moab. It was a kingdom that had never been on friendly terms with the Israelites. And importantly enough, it never had an ounce of love for the Lord. It was a country full, absolutely full of idolatry. And the biggest false god they had there was called Chemosh. Do you remember Solomon, the wisest man in the world? Well, one of the greatest stains of his entire reign was when he built shrines and altars to Chemosh on a hilltop. Why? Because he married a Moabite woman who wanted her God to be remembered in the land of Israel. So Solomon said, well, I'll build your God a high place and on a hilltop. And it was a stain on his entire reign. He brought idolatry to where there should be none. Where God said, you'll have no gods other than me, there was one. It was a country with a named God that had altars of Chemosh on every hill and the name of a demon over every doorpost. That's the country Elimelech took his family into. The exact opposite of where he'd come. After hearing that, seeing the seeing the contrast between Israel and Moab, we're left with one question. Why? Why would you do this? How would it happen? How could a man who had lived his entire life in the promised land, who had known God's blessings and God's goodness, somebody who had even lived in a little town that was called the House of Bread, somebody who presumably loved the Lord, how could he pick his family up to take them to such a land and raise his children where they worshipped a demon? How could it happen? Do you know what the unsettling part of it is? He didn't intend it to be that way. Think about it. He did not intend it to be this way. He never once sat down and decided that this would be the end result. Consider the first choice, and it was so small. And you know what's scary? It looks so small. And it looks so reasonable. Doesn't it? His family's starving. Just a month or two over there. We'll just take a tent. That's all we need. It's not going to be for long. Just to see how the land lies. Just until things pick up back home. And don't you worry, he probably told his neighbours, don't you worry, we'll be back before you know it. You won't even know we're gone. We can picture it. We can. But the thing is, he made this choice. And you know what? Maybe a month later, he gets a message. Hope you're okay, Elimelech. Hope the family's all well. Just going to see. When are you coming home? So he replies, well, soon. Not long now. The next month comes along. Another letter comes in the post. And again, same reply. It won't be long now, and I'll be back. And he made the same choice next month. And again, not just yet, soon. And the next month comes along, and again, and again, and again. And before you know it, the people stop writing. You see, this is the thing. Drifting isn't one decision. It's one decision, then 1,000 refusals to reverse it. And the thing is this, Elimelech did not choose it all at once. That's why it never felt like a choice to him. He didn't choose the end result. And this is what I want us to really grasp and take hold of today. Because this is where we take a walk in Satan's playground and look at one of his favourite toys. Just think of this. Elimelech there in the middle of the famine with his wife and 2 lads, and they've decided to leave. They've got all packed and about to leave, and just imagine, as he was about to leave the door, just as he was about to close the door on his own for the last time, he saw the full future ahead of him. 10 years in Moab, in a land of demonic worship. A grave in a foreign field, Elimelech, where you will be put and very quickly forgotten. And by the way, there's going to be 2 graves either side of it, one each for one of your boys. If he knew what the end result would be, he would have slammed the door shut and said, we may live or die. But whether we live or die, it's going to be in the promised land of Israel. There is not a soul alive who would have taken that offer if they knew what the final payment would have been. So that's why the devil never offered it. The offer is just a month. The offer is there's bread in Moab. The offer is just until things pick up. And every step taken on its own looks like almost nothing. And it looks so reasonable and understandable. Which is precisely why it works so well. We all know this verse, don't we? Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. This is what Peter called Satan, a roaring lion, going about looking to devour. And it's true, Peter means every word of it. But the thing is with a roaring lion, you know when he's there. You can hear a roaring lion coming a mile away. And you can run the other mile. There's almost a small mercy in that. But here's the thing. No lion ever got into the Garden of Eden. It was a serpent. The serpent was more cunning than any of the beasts of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? If we were wondering who the serpent is, it's made clear at the very end of the book, of the Bible rather. So in Revelation 12, so the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. The same enemy and 2 pictures. The danger is we can spend our lives looking for the lion, looking for the big thing that comes our way, not realizing that there's a serpent already coming up whispering in our ears. Isn't that a reasonable step to take? Only for a week, only for a month. The serpent doesn't roar. The serpent asks the question. Did God really say that? And then a reassurance. And then the fruit. Coming to Elimelech. There's food over there, you know. You don't have to go for long. Just a short time, see how it is. You'll be back before you know it. Look at your lads, look at your wife. Don't you want to provide for them? It's just there in touching distance. You know, the very place Elimelech went, we can see this very thing in action. The lion and the serpent. Because Moab, centuries earlier, had tried to destroy Israel head on, and it got them nowhere. If you want to read about it, it's in the book of Numbers 22 to 25. Centuries before, the king of Moab, Balak, had watched Israel come out of Egypt, and he was absolutely terrified of these people. Who wouldn't be? Egypt was the superpower of the world. And humbled by the Israelites. Terrified. So what does the king do? He hires a prophet, a man called Balaam, to stand on the hills, and he says, Balaam, you're going to curse the Israelites. Every time Balaam the prophet opened his mouth, out came a blessing. 3 times he tried to curse Israel. 3 times there was a blessing placed upon them. So Balaam had to think. And he went to the king, he said, I've got an idea, I can't curse them. It's always a blessing. But here's an idea, O king. You can't curse them, but we can tempt them. Send in your women to tempt the men of Israel to your gods. So he did, and it worked. It worked a treat. Israel, who could not be cursed, gave in to Moab's women and bowed to Moab's gods. A plague came upon Israel, and 24,000 people died. The curse, the lion, killed no one. But the welcome, that serpent, killed 24,000. That's the lion and that's the serpent. And there was not one soul in Israel who saw the serpent coming. And when you look at Elimelech, there was no lion's roar over Bethlehem either. Nobody heard a thing. It was a famine. It was a husband who loved his wife, a father who loved his children, and a serpent's whisper. There's food over the border, you know, Elimelech. That's all it was, that one little whisper. And which one of us here would have heard anything wrong in that? Because I'll tell you what, ask any one of us right now to deny the Lord and we refuse. We know exactly what that was. It's the lion. We can hear him coming. Ask us to make one little sensible decision on a Tuesday afternoon that puts us the smallest distance between us and God, and we'll do it and never think of it again. But before we blame everything on the serpent, well, we can't actually. James doesn't let us. In James 1 we read, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. Look at the chain, drawn away, enticed, conceived, born, fully grown, and then death. It's the same slow creep we watched with a tent. Only this time it isn't happening to a house, it's happening to the heart inside of us. And nobody ever stands at this first link of drawn away and sees death. Nobody feels that first pull away from the Lord and thinks, well, this is going to end in death. But look at what James says draws him away. His own desires. Not somebody else's, his own desires. Satan supplies the reasonable thing. Man supplies the steps. And Elimelech supplied his own step after step after step, where the tent became a little bit more than a tent, became a little bit more than that until a house. And do you know what the tragic thing about all of this is? In Hebrew, the name is never just a name. A name always meant something. We've mentioned it a few times now. Do you know what word Elimelech means? It's actually two words. Eli Melech. It means, my God is king. Everything about this man's journey spoke the very opposite. Look at it in three ways. We said last week he walked away from the fountain of living waters to go dig his own cistern out in Moab. His God was the God who provides. And he turned his back on him to go provide for himself. That's one. His name said, my God is king, at a time when Israel didn't have a king. And he went off to live under a foreign crown in a land with a king who was no king of the Lords. That's two. And he said, and his name said, my God. And he raised his own boys in a land where God was not God at all, but a demon was worshipped. Three, provider, king, and God. Three things that Elimelech's name confessed. And he turned his back on every one of them. Now, do you think Elimelech knew what his name meant? Of course he did. Names were important to the Israelites. But have you considered what that name was doing all those years in Moab? Every time his wife called out, anyone ever spoke to him called it out. And every single time, out loud, was a reminder that said one thing to him: you don't belong here. It's not your land. A man whose name, my God, is king, living under the crown of Chemosh. And for all that time, he heard it and ignored it. Heard it and ignored it. Heard it and ignored it. Until one day, it was just a name. Elimelech. Not Eli Melech. Just Elimelech. The meaning had all but gone. That's what drifting does. It's not that the reminder stops. It's like you stop hearing it. But rather than end on that bad note, turn it round, because there's something lovely hiding in it. If the reminder never stopped, that means somebody never stopped giving it. Every morning he woke up in a foreign, hostile land. He was still called, "My God is King." You see, the name isn't a report about Elimelech. It was a statement on God. And God had not changed. In 2 Timothy 2, we see, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself. If you take one thing home with you this afternoon, let it be this. If we are faithless, he is faithful. He cannot deny himself. It's not that God grits his teeth and thinks, well, I'm going to have to stick it out with them because he gave us his word and he won't go back on it. It's that he can't be anything else. Faithfulness isn't something God does like you and me. Faithfulness is who God is. For God to stop being faithful towards us, he would have to stop being God. Mm-hmm. Our faithfulness comes and goes. We know that well enough, every single one of us. God's cannot. God does not abandon us when we wander off to the land we were not meant to be. The reminder remains. He kept saying it to Elimelech every single day, through the man's own name. Every day he lived in that land. You don't belong to them. Come home. And you know, he's still saying reminders today to us. How many of us had one of those moments, you pick up the Bible and a verse you weren't even looking for just seems to jump out and you think, that's got my name on it. Or an old hymn comes to mind and it's got the words and you think that is more than a coincidence. That's what I need right now. Richard's nodding his head. He must have had this. Do you think that was chance? It's God. That's God speaking to somebody who may have stopped listening. And the reminder never stops because he is faithful. But don't forget the other half of it. Elimelech heard that name for as long as he lived in Moab. And he died there all the same. God never stopped calling him back. He just didn't go. What do we do with a man like Elimelech? We learn from him, that's what. Because he didn't walk away from God in a day. He lost him an inch at a time. And that's the warning I would like us to leave with today. You give the devil an inch, and it doesn't matter how long it takes, he will take the mile. He doesn't ever ask for the mile. He knows you'd never hand the mile over. But 1,000 inches, absolutely. He asks for the reasonable step. He asks just for a season. God's own word puts it bluntly. Do not give place to the devil. Don't give him place. Don't give him the foothold. Not 1 inch. Hold on to the Lord. Peter says this, therefore, brethren, be even more diligent to make your calling and election sure. For if you do these things, you will never stumble. Be diligent. Hold on to what you know is true. And never once let yourself go deaf to his voice. And make your calling and election sure.